Hi indie designers, it's Johnny from Indie Source, and we are here in our development production room at Indie Source in downtown Los Angeles. And earlier today, Brandon and I sat down to answer your how-to questions. We wanted to focus on your how-tos because we are so passionate about helping you to execute your creative vision that we wanted to answer some of those questions that you have, because we are so passionate about ensuring that you create successful product. So if you have any other further questions, make sure to tune in on Tuesdays at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time on Instagram, where we'll answer some more of your how-tos. But in the meanwhile, let's go ahead and take a look at the video that Brendan and I had recorded earlier. Hi everyone, welcome to Indie Source. We are here live during office hours to answer some of your questions. So Brandon works with production. So when you are ready to move from development to production, Brandon is here to help you get started. So I know, Brandon, because of the fact that you work mostly with production, I think that sometimes people get a little bit confused, especially when people come in and they're like, you know what, I'm ready for production, but in reality they're actually ready for development.
Yeah.
What are some of your takeaways from that?
So I have this conversation all the time with clients. Everyone, they have an idea of what they want to make, or a shirt they see that's been made by somebody else, and they think, hey, we can come in and make this. We want 300, 500,000 of these. But what they need to understand is if they want to build their brand, they got to start from the beginning. We got to source that fabric. What kind of fabric do you want? The feel, the color, the brightness. There's just so many variables that just go in just that initial piece. And then we actually have to make your patterns, so it gives it that custom fit, that custom feel. So the things we always ask for is, and this is where some people get confused, is reference. We need reference samples, reference fit. So that's what we want. That's the time you bring in another brand's fit, another fabric that someone else has used to make something. So then you can sit down with our team and go, hey, okay, we have this shirt that feels like this, and then we have this shirt that fits like this. How do we make that? How do we want to make it our own way? Build it around ourselves, our brand, what we're trying to build the company around.
And I think that you bring up a good point, because a lot of times people get confused when we're talking about reference samples, and I think that that's where they think, okay, I'm ready for production because I have this reference sample, and really that is the biggest difference. So when you have a reference sample and you have an idea, you're ready for development, but it's actually when you have a completed sample that you have created and patterns to go along with your product, then you're ready for production. So that's one of the biggest things, because I think that sometimes people get confused as far as that goes. But you know what? A lot of people then have the question, well, I don't necessarily know how to sketch, or I don't really have sketches, or maybe they do have sketches, but they don't necessarily have a finished product. Do you have something to talk about regarding, the fact that they don't really need sketches in order to begin?
No, they don't. So you bring us reference samples and fit and fabric. We can digitize those and actually make patterns for you. And we emphasize doing it with us because we do it at the highest quality. We provide you a pattern card. We provide you best patterns. We make the sketches. We also will digitize them in the industry standard Gerber software. So you can go to any manufacturing facility. Of course, we want you to manufacture with us, but as most brands know, as they grow, they want to diversify their options. You never know what can happen at a factory. So being able to have that foundation of those patterns that are made top quality is crucial, because it's the foundation of your line. So we want to make sure we're providing you samples or patterns that you can go to any manufacturer, and it's going to be easy to communicate and represent what you're trying to make with each style across your collection. And that's how we can that's what comes after that, is those samples. And in that process of development, we go back to those, what we talk about, revisions, and making another sample, because we want to perfect it. We want to make sure our goal, and what we're talking about, it starts with reference samples and reference fit and fabric to get you production ready. And that's what development is. And that's why it's so important for our clients to know why we emphasize this stage of development. Mm-hmm. Because good development, great development, leads to easy production. And I think that's really important for everyone to know.
Definitely. And I think one of the biggest takeaways too is a lot of the people that we work with are not necessarily fashion designers, as you mentioned. You know, they might just have a dream. You know, they're an entrepreneur and they want to come in and they want to start a fashion line. And so as an entrepreneur, you have this vision. You might not necessarily have all the skill sets, you don't necessarily have all the sketching abilities, whatever it might be, but it's still an opportunity for people to begin their vision, their American dream of wanting to create a clothing line. And that's really what we stand for. And so when you're talking about, you know, versus development and production, and again, Brandon deals with the production sales. So if ever you're gonna come in and you're ready for production, he's the one that's gonna be talking with you and helping you to basically realize that dream. You know, that's who Brandon is.
We have a question.
We do have a question.
So one of our viewers would like to know, what are some questions that a designer should be asking a potential clothing manufacturer to vet that they're working with the right manufacturer?
Yeah, that's great. I think that we have the right person. Yeah. So, you know, yeah, what do you think?
So, well, first, I mean, first, you want to understand what kind of work have we done? You know, what are some, you know, what styles have we worked on? Ask about their work. How long have they been in business? But really, what's most important to you? Make sure you understand that going into a conversation with us, because sometimes it's sustainability, sometimes it's cost, sometimes it's quality, and you know, hopefully it's most of the time it's all three, but obviously some way more in than the others. So those questions vary. But I would always make sure to understand what does your production look like, and not just what does the manufacturing facility look like, but what does that process look like, and what is the communication that manufacturer brings to you throughout the process. Because I've worked with a lot of clients who've come to us after working with another manufacturer and have been working, it's been a year, 2 years, and they're still not where they need to be. And it's a lot of those things are lack of communication, not understanding exactly what needs to be made, development not being done properly. So that's why us being full package is such a value add, because if someone comes to us, even with samples that are done, maybe their patterns aren't 100% up to quality, or maybe some adjustments need to be made, we're not gonna send you somewhere else. We're gonna make sure we take care of that for you and make sure we get you 100% production ready for us, and going from there.
So that's a great segue into the next question from one of our viewers. If you are a designer with the ability to sketch and make your own patterns, how do you go about getting your collection produced without having tech pack skills?
Well, we make them for you. That's the simple answer. I mean, we make the tech packs for you. So, I mean, again, I think that you can speak to this.
Yeah, again, and like I say, when you come to speak with us and work with us, the best way, Zach and I always put it to our clients, is we don't have a menu of items we offer. I mean, everything is fully custom, because we know every designer, every brand is different. I mean, not only in the message they're trying to send, I mean, it's art, it's creativity, but everyone can be in a different situation. So if we came in and said, hey, this is how it needs to be done, it would be too hard to work with anybody. So we make sure we understand exactly where you need to be, and then create a project plan and proposal that's adjusted specific to where you're at, that's gonna fit, where you're not looking or paying for services that you don't need because it's part of the menu. You know, we're gonna fully customize what you need with our project plans.
And that's the whole reason why we call ourselves a full package manufacturer. Because again, not every clothing line is exactly the same. We don't have, like as you said, you know, a menu where people can just say, oh, I'll take the number 3, and it comes with all these different elements. You, as the designer, know exactly what it is that you want, so you can customize it. So whether you need help with this particular project or this piece, or you're ready for production, or you need help even with marketing, whatever it might be, we offer all those services. Yeah, those are really good questions. And going back to the beginning when you're talking about, you know, how do you know it's a good manufacturer? I mean, the biggest thing is that, you know, here at IndieSource, we believe in transparency. And just like how we're having this live conversation, we're coming to you live right now from downtown Los Angeles in our building. So we have 2 parts of the building, and you probably have seen it a lot through our videos and our behind the scenes content, but we have our sales and development team on one side of the room, and then literally across the hall, there is the production side. So over here is where we are creating the development samples, you know, whether it's the sewing room, the cutting table, working on little mass pieces, whatever it might be, everything is right here. So as a designer, you can come in, you can see exactly what's happening. And again, because of the fact that we value transparency so much, that we want to invite you into the location where your clothing is being manufactured. And we also have a couple of behind the scenes videos of our designers that we're working with who have come in, toured around, seen what's happening at the cutting table, see their physical garments being created. I mean, you can't beat that, So again,
No, of course.
obviously we're going to say Indie Source is the right manufacturer to work with, but when you're talking about, what are the qualities, I think that look around, like this is it. This is the qualities. Like, it's the fact that there's transparency, it's local, it's somewhere that you can actually visit. And I mean, even regarding communication, like there's open communication, we're here to answer questions. So I think that sums it up.
Yeah, no, of course. And just going back to what Johnny was saying, even though I'm focusing on the production side, I need to understand the most about what's important in development, because I give the okay if someone's ready for production or not. And one thing about us all being here, each piece being here, our project managers, our pattern maker, our sample makers, we're all together. You need to communicate with one another. You need to be on the same floor for that to go right. And I think so many people go shopping around, say, let me find someone to source fabric or get fabric on my own somewhere else, then go to another pattern maker, and then find someone else to make their samples. And it's just, when you start to fragment it like that, it becomes a mess. And then that's when we have these conversations where it's like, hey, it's good to work with someone who understands development and who's doing it all under the same roof, where the whole team can communicate throughout the entire process.
That's a perfect way to put it. Because it's true. When you're just starting out, you're thinking, I gotta go to all these different places and I gotta source it from all these different areas.
Exactly.
And again, that's why we are here, as a full package manufacturer, because we understand that as a new designer, it's hard to go around and find all those different sources and try to do it all yourself. Because you already have enough work being the designer, being the entrepreneur. You should be out there marketing your product.
Build your brand, tell your story, let us take all the work and put it on our shoulders.
Right. Do we have another question?
Yeah, we do. So we have a designer asking, how do we work with designers that are not local? So how can we virtually work with a designer to go through the development process?
Right. So do you want to talk a little bit about the virtual options?
A lot of our clients are across the country. So we can do everything we can do virtually as far as communication goes. Working with your project manager, starting there. Your communication with them would be, if we're going to start with fabric sourcing, going back and forth, sending swatches, waiting for your approvals. Fittings, we can provide fittings and fit models here and fittings here locally at our fitting room here. Anything else on?
Yeah. So basically the thing is that we know that there are designers all over the country. You're obviously not going to be right here in Los Angeles, and it's a benefit if you are. But if you're not, we do have lots of opportunities for designers that we work with. So from the very beginning, you would be having a virtual kickoff meeting. So after you talk to, whether it's one of our brand specialists or maybe even Brandon, depending on what part you're ready for, whether it's development or production, you would have the virtual kickoff meeting. So that's an opportunity to get the initial conversation going. So, what is like the price points, what's your budget, what's the high level conversation that we're gonna have? That's the kickoff meeting. And then from there, again, as you said, we would be working with the project manager. So our project managers would then communicate with you via email, FaceTime, whatever it might be. It's amazing the way that technology works, and we're able to do all this. So you partner with your project manager, they source all the fabrics, we would send you swatch cards back and forth. You can say, I like this fabric, I picked this one out, I like this one, whatever it might be. And then once everything has been sourced, then it's ready for the development samples. And again, those will all be created here in-house in Los Angeles. So the development samples are created, then they're sent off to you, and we'll do a fitting. And that's where the virtual fittings come into play. So our head pattern maker, Lana, will sit down with your project manager, do the fittings, you'll try them on, or if you want to keep them here, a fit model, as you said, would be available. So if you have someone, you would send them here, they try on the clothing, we do a virtual FaceTime or whatever it is that you want to utilize the platform, and then you can review it and we'll say, okay, this works, this doesn't work, let's make these changes, whatever it might be. Or we send, again, the item to you, you try it on, then you do the virtual fitting for us. We'll ask you to pin it in certain places where it needs to be adjusted, and then from there, once everything is approved, then you'll go right into production. Production begins, again, that's all local for the most part, and then after everything is completed, then it's basically ready for shipping. And that's basically the process. It's really easy.
Cool, guys. I think we have time for one more question from a viewer. And they're curious to understand how designers can retain the copyright for their designs. So maybe we could speak to how they own the intellectual property for that proprietary design that we're creating just for them.
Of course you own it. And I think that this is a great question because we get asked this a lot. I'm sure in production you get asked this, but at least I can talk to you, at least from a marketing perspective. People are concerned because the way that they see it is, well, I'm handing over my designs, my, whatever it is, my intellectual property to another person to create it. And the fact of the matter is that we're working with you. We are creating the garment clothing line for you. So we are the manufacturers, but you are still the entrepreneur. So, as far as concerns with designers that you work with regarding copyrights.
Yeah, and then the other thing is going back to patterns. We work with a lot of clients who come to us and say, hey, we're moving from a different manufacturer. We can't leave with our patterns. With us, not only are we going to make top of the line quality patterns and pattern files, but we're going to make sure you own those files. So no matter what you do, wherever you go, those are your files to own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully that answered that.
All right, one last question that we'll squeeze in. One of our viewers wants to understand, what is the turnaround time for changes in sampling once you've had your first fittings? And what does that process look like?
Yeah, another great question. And it varies. It does vary, honestly.
It does vary because we're so thorough and big on approvals. Remember, there's a lot of back and forth. From the beginning of development, improving fabrics, same thing as fittings. It could vary from, if we get to the stage where we're doing adjusting samples, it could be a few weeks or longer. It just really depends on, once we get you that sample, how long does it take for you to provide your feedback and it to come back to us. I don't know if you want to speak a little more to that. I just know that it's that question, there's so many variables because it's all about approvals, it's all about your approval and your feedback. So it's how quickly are we getting that feedback, and that's how quickly we can move with it.
Right. So basically, to go back to the very first thing that we were talking about, is the fact that it's not like a menu board. You don't have, combo number one that you can just say, I want it specifically like this. So because of the fact that everything is customizable, we can't necessarily say, it's for sure going to be done in this amount of time. What happens if you add something that's going to be more intricate, like whether it's a sewing feature, it's changing the fabric? What if you want to resource fabric and we have to go out there and find the new fabric? Again, all those variables, it could just be that, at the arm was a little too long, maybe like in the seam, and it just needs to be brought up. That's an easy fix. Or, I don't really like this fabric, I really want this other fabric, and it needs to be this very specific thing from Italy and everything else. It varies. It really does. But the thing is that we understand that as entrepreneurs, you have deadlines to meet. You have release schedules. You have photo shoots that you need to work around. But the biggest thing is to have open communication, so that if you do have those requirements that you need to meet, let us know. Because the one thing I mentioned about photo shoots and working with marketing is that I do talk to our brands about that, and sometimes they schedule out things not really taking into consideration these alterations or changing things. And it's like, I had this deadline, I need to meet this in 2 months. And yes, we do say that turnaround is typically within that time period, but again, you never know, because then what happens if something goes wrong or you have to restart something or something has to be resourced? So what I would say, at least from that perspective, is wait until you kind of have a good idea that it's almost done, then you can plan all those other things.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that was everything. So thank you so much, Brandon, for joining us. We
Thank you for
appreciate
having me,
it.
of course.
And to all of our designers out there, again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. Continue to bring them in. You can add them to the comments. You can direct message us through social media. You can also send us an email at sales@indiesource.com. All the information is in the comments, so please do that. And then you can also tune in next week, Tuesdays at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.